America rocked by massive explosion, chaos and panic everywhere. Ladies and gentlemen, imagine waking up in America, checking your phone, and seeing this headline. Massive explosion at a major oil refinery. Black smoke covering the sky, houses shaking for miles. Now, normally, Americans hear explosions and think, probably another Michael Bay movie. But this time, it wasn't Hollywood. This was Louisiana. And suddenly, the internet exploded with conspiracy theories faster than Elon Musk tweets at 3 a.m. Because here's the scary part. The explosion happened right in the middle of rising tensions between America and Iran. Coincidence? Maybe. But the timing is so suspicious that even your conspiracy theory uncle started saying, bro, connect the dots. And once people started connecting those dots, the entire geopolitical map started looking like one giant Netflix thriller. Tonight we are talking about the refinery explosion shaking America, Iran flexing against the US, Israel pushing for a bigger war, oil markets going crazy, and why the whole world suddenly feels one bad decision away from absolute chaos. Let's get into it. So here's what happened. A massive explosion and fire reportedly hit a major oil refinery in Louisiana. Huge flames, thick black smoke, residents saying they felt vibrations miles away. You know, it's serious when Americans leave restaurants before finishing their fries. That's national emergency behavior. The refinery processes massive amounts of crude oil daily. We are talking about a key piece of U.S. energy infrastructure. And the visuals coming out look terrifying. Now, officially, authorities are investigating whether this was an industrial accident, equipment failure, or something else. And online, people immediately went, something else. Because this didn't happen in isolation. Over the past months, multiple refinery fires and energy-related incidents have reportedly happened across different countries. And whenever global oil infrastructures starts catching fire one after another, people begin asking dangerous questions. Questions like, is this sabotage? Is someone sending a message? Are we already in an economic war? And honestly, at this point, geopolitics feels less like diplomacy and more like a multiplayer Call of Duty lobby. Now, while this refinery story was blowing up, literally, another drama was unfolding between Washington and Tehran. The US reportedly pushed Iran with a proposal regarding negotiations and regional tensions. Then came the pressure campaign. American officials started signaling, we need an answer soon, which in diplomatic language basically means, reply before we lose patience and start parking aircraft carriers near your coastline. But Iran's response? Ice cold. Iranian officials basically said, we will respond when we decide. That's it. No panic, no rushing, no scrambling. And this matters because the entire Middle East right now is operating like a room full of armed people standing next to gasoline. One wrong move, everything ignites. And then comes Israel. Because according to multiple regional reports and political commentary, Israeli leadership has been pressuring Washington to take a much harder line on Iran, especially regarding Iran's energy infrastructure. Now think about how dangerous this is. If energy facilities become military targets, you are no longer dealing with a regional conflict. You are dealing with global economic warfare. Because oil is not just fuel anymore. Oil is power. Oil is inflation. Oil is elections. Oil is grocery prices. Oil is whether Americans can afford to drive to work without crying at the gas station. Every conflict today eventually turns into, congratulations, your eggs are now $14. Now here's where things get really terrifying. Iran has long hinted at using leverage around the Strait of Hormuz. And if you don't know what that is, the Strait of Hormuz is basically the world's oil artery. A huge percentage of global oil shipments pass through that narrow waterway. Meaning, if tensions explode there, the entire global economy gets punched in the throat. Gas prices spike, markets panic, shipping costs rise, inflation worsens. Basically, every American suddenly starts Googling how much can a human kidney sell for. Because remember, the economy is already fragile. People are still recovering from inflation, layoffs, housing costs, student debt, and now the world's energy routes are turning into a battlefield. Fantastic. Exactly what everyone needed in 2026. And then, because this timeline apparently wasn't insane enough, Donald Trump enters the conversation. Reports and speeches linked to Trump allies have hinted at stronger future action against Iran if negotiations fail. And honestly, Trump discussing military pressure feels like watching someone try to solve a kitchen fire with fireworks. Everything immediately becomes louder and more chaotic. Supporters say strong pressure keeps adversaries in check. Critics say aggressive rhetoric risks dragging America into another endless conflict. And Americans hear all this and think, wait, weren't we just trying to avoid World War III last week? The US public is exhausted. After Iraq, Afghanistan, Ukraine spending debates, economic stress, most Americans don't want another giant Middle East conflict, especially Gen Z. Gen Z sees potential war headlines and reacts like, can't fight in World War III. I have therapy at 4. Meanwhile, the Middle East is already burning. While diplomats argue and politicians posture, actual fighting continues across the region. Reports from Gaza, clashes involving Hezbollah, drone attacks, rocket fire, military retaliation, and every side claims victory. Every side claims self-defense. Every side claims the other side escalated first. At this point, Middle Eastern geopolitics is basically, no, you started it, no, you started it, with missiles, and civilians, they pay the price. Always. Families lose homes, markets collapse, infrastructure gets destroyed, entire generations grow up surrounded by war. Meanwhile, billionaires and defense contractors are sitting in boardrooms like, this quarter's earnings look amazing. Now let's talk about what nobody in Washington wants to admit. The biggest fear right now may not even be military defeat, it's economic instability. Because modern wars don't just happen with bombs anymore. They happen through sanctions, shipping routes, cyber attacks, oil supply chains, financial systems, and global trade pressure. That's why refinery explosions terrify governments, even if they're accidents, because markets don't care whether it was sabotage or bad wiring. Markets just see instability, and instability spreads fast. The second investors panic, everything reacts. Stocks, fuel, shipping, food, inflation. That's why one explosion in Louisiana suddenly becomes global news. Because the world economy is now one giant interconnected spiderweb held together with duct tape and caffeine. So, is a US-Iran deal still possible? Here's a million-dollar question. Can America and Iran still reach some kind of understanding? Technically, yes. Politically, very difficult. Emotionally, everybody's too angry. Strategically, nobody wants to look weak. America wants leverage. Iran wants sovereignty. Israel wants security guarantees. Regional powers want protection. China and Russia are watching everything carefully. And ordinary people, they just want groceries that don't require a payment plan. That's the tragedy here. Global power struggles always sound dramatic on TV, but regular people experience them through higher bills, higher gas prices, economic anxiety, and fear. So here we are, a massive explosion in America, rising tensions with Iran, Israel pushing harder, oil routes under pressure, global markets nervous, and the entire planet feels like it's standing in a room filled with gasoline while world leaders casually play with matches. Maybe this all de-escalates, maybe diplomacy wins, or maybe humanity once again proves that we learned absolutely nothing from the last 100 years. Because if there's one thing humans are incredible at, is repeating history with better graphics. And honestly, that should scare everybody. So that's it. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, hit the like button, share it with your friends, and do subscribe to the channel.